Okay, let's get a bit of a feel for what may assist you in some way to embrace your wholeness. Who invented that really shiny, smooth toilet paper like is in the toilet What idiot comes up with smooth, shiny toilet paper? Just kind of smears. Anyway, you know, criticism. Who still has a bit of trouble with criticism? Me, you're saying? Criticism. You know how I like to talk about everything's just a vibration and higher and lower correspondence of the same thing. You got any idea what criticism is a lower harmonic of, a lower vibration of?
No.
Well, that's a safe bet. Love, yes, it's a lower correspondence of love. Revelation, an actual fact. It is just simply revelation in a lower octave. It's actually 3 octaves below what we would term revelation. So what might be nice to do now, as you're so into feeling certain things, is to work with the inner critic and specifically target the inner critic with a stream of consciousness from within your own God flame, the God within you. We're going to use your internal divine spark to focus a stream of consciousness onto within what is termed the inner critic and work on raising the vibration of that dynamic. And if you're successful in doing that, which requires a lot of allowance and appreciation, surrender, acceptance, then you will find yourself having an internally generated revelation. Now, why do I like to teach people how to do this? Because it's the real beginning of being in the position where you really don't need a teacher. Because if you're able to marshal your will sufficiently, if you are able to love yourself enough, and you master a lot of these other Christ harmonics that I've been sharing with you, like surrender and appreciation and gratitude and such things, then you're able to choose to express your energy in such a way that you can internally generate self-revelation. It doesn't have the mirror aspect that you'll get when you work with me. So brutal honesty and sincerity directed towards self is a very important aspect of this. However, it's one of the most important tools, one of the most important qualities, abilities of mastery, one of the most important tools in your toolkit that you can use if you really want to be your own source on the planet and your own source to the planet. Because there will be times when you will have absolutely nothing to go on but your own gut feel. Your own gut feel, although it's, for all intents and purposes, a reflection in your humanness of intuition, which is a quality of the higher mind and the Buddhic body, the gut feel is influenced by hang-ups and phobias and predispositions, prejudices, judgments. When you can apply this process with a certain amount of ego refinement, then the gut feel then becomes something that you can use to verify choices that you've made. It's almost like consulting an oracle, and we all know how you consult an oracle. You ask a question and then you get the runes or the tarot cards or whatever, and you just keep pulling runes and cards until you get the one that you want. Who's not done that? Who's not done that? Really? Okay, you just lay out the whole deck. Yeah. So this is really bringing the oracle back into yourself so that you don't need an external reflector for intuition. And it's also a very, very, very important part of learning how to apply mediumship within a real context, to be able to channel without needing an external medium of reflection. So it's an important part of training for seership, to be able to use this process. And in truth, the biggest barrier to genuine clarity of seership is that inner critic dynamic. So to refine that and then to be able to raise the vibration of that, which restores clarity and purity to that aspect of self, and then to learn to be able to focus a stream of consciousness from what some call the high heart or the focus of the God within or whatever, is then a mechanism which allows you to generate revelation, which is then readily verifiable through sensation, feeling and knowing expressed as revelation within the mental body, all coupled with the gut feel. So you have several very tangible feelings of whether or not something is appropriate in the moment. It doesn't mean it's fixed in concrete, because destiny is not a set in concrete or preordained thing. It's something which you create and discover as you go along. So although something may be massively relevant in this particular moment, you may have a learning in a subsequent moment. It may be in 5 minutes' time or 2 days' time, and that alters the entire realm of future possibilities, of future nows. So it's a tool which kind of needs to be continually utilised and updated. It's not something that you use like the oracle and you just keep drawing the runes. People, I knew someone a few years ago who was trying to get a particular aura photograph done. Wanted to have this particular aura photograph, and she never liked the aura photographs that she got. So she used to sit and meditate and focus on visualising all these different colours and stuff in her aura, and she spent a fortune on going back and having all these aura photographs. And this was someone that was involved in a group that I was facilitating, and this person had kept getting aura photograph after aura photograph, and she'd taught how she could trick the aura camera and project thought forms into her aura and stuff which would register, and then eventually she got the picture that she wanted, and she brought it to this group. She said, "Look, see, this is me." Okay. She left the group soon after and is still trying to be the aura photograph as she would like herself to be. So she was telling herself her puzzle piece was different to what felt right for her, and a whole lot of other things, and created an enormous amount of self-delusion and illusion around that. So it's a similar manifestation to drawing keep on drawing the runes until you find the one that your ego finds palatable. So the inner critic is what I want to work with in this moment. So the first thing that I'd like to do is energetically draw forth some criticism from you. I'll see how quickly I can induce a critical line of consciousness being directed towards me, an aspect of your day-to-day living, an aspect of earth life that you find distasteful. A pet hate is what I'd like you to focus on within yourself. A pet hate, that there's a certain amount of self-righteousness associated with. You feel justified in having this pet hate. So of course with self-righteousness there's always the desire for revenge, the feeling of that it's quite fair to expect retribution because of this. Pet hate, you feel quite justified in having a personal dislike, a personal prejudice, that at the same time you judge. Another part of yourself judges you for having that predisposition towards that line of self-righteousness. I'm not really asking you to think about anything. Who's got a pet hate that they'd like to share?
I guess when you just started, I started feeling this this sense of why would you want to cause us to attack you? And I realized that I have I hate to be attacked and criticized. Through self-righteousness, because I think I'm right, and I don't want to be reminded that you think I'm wrong, and I don't want to feel small when I'm criticized.
So you've really hit the nail on the head there, because the whole thing about the inner critic is that it's generated out of a fear of criticism. So the inner critic is something which develops from being criticized, and then the defense mechanism against that criticism is for you to develop this inner dynamic which is called the inner critic. And how does that work? It's very, very painful. It's enormously painful to be criticized. So we start to feel that the best way to defend ourselves against the criticism is to criticize ourselves more. If we criticize ourselves more than the level of external criticism, then the level of external criticism can't hurt us. Which makes perfect sense, particularly in the mind of a child. Because you feel powerless, you're not able to do anything about it. But what I can do is criticize myself more than the external sources of criticism. So that makes perfect sense and puts you back into control and makes you feel powerful, but it just becomes like everything else, it just becomes a habit. So as that becomes a habit, we find over time, we get into a situation where it becomes not a coping mechanism not only for the defense against external criticism, but it's also a defense against intimacy. So it becomes an excuse that we use to not engage in trust. It becomes an excuse that we use to not engage in genuine intimacy, genuine human intimacy. And I don't mean sex by that, I mean genuinely being, trusting and open and taking the risks associated with that. So the inner critic also, in the final analysis, as we grow into an adult life, the inner critic is the main defense mechanism, the main coping mechanism that we use to guard against risks. We use the inner critic to justify not taking risks. Now, the only absolute in the universe is change. Change always involves risk. So if you guard against taking a risk, you can't change, you can't grow, and that's how we become stuck in these holding patterns, pure and simple. So at the root cause of most procrastination, not all procrastination, but almost all procrastination, and the vast majority of dysfunctional behaviours, addictions, avoidance and denial, the root cause of that is pretty much, say 95% of that is the inner critic dynamic. Can you go back to an incident, a specific incident, on the time track in this lifetime when you were just so open? You were just so open and so excited. So open and so excited when you were a little kid and you went to some significant other, it could be a parent or a teacher or a whatever. Mummy, look at my new friend. It's a centipede. Ah! Criticism rained down or whatever. It doesn't need to make sense. And you look at it now through the lens of a seemingly civilized, dysfunctional adult, and it might seem to be completely ridiculous and absurd, but it was very real for you then. Someone criticised you. The first really significant incident of criticism. And you're going to find that out of that first real significant incident of criticism has come all of your behaviour of pleasing, because it's the first incident of the loss of innocence. And as you lose that innocence, you go into feelings of not good enough, defectiveness. So all of your feelings of defectiveness stem from that one particular incident on the time track in this lifetime. So if you've got the courage and you can really feel into that particular incident, really feel into it, really feel into it. Stop thinking about it. Okay? Feel into it. Feel what it was like. Don't think about it, because that's a third person sitting, observing, watching the television thing. You're there. You're there. What's it feel like? Being criticised. Okay, that first real memory of being significantly put down and criticised, devalued, made to feel like that you were fundamentally defective. Now what shut down? Your heart in that moment, didn't it, right? So if you can feel, now the tools that I've shared with you, acknowledge, acknowledge, acknowledge. If you need to forgive, forgive. Don't judge yourself about needing to forgive. Forgive yourself. Forgive whoever else was involved. And at the same time as feeling that, now you can think a little bit if you want. In this moment, do you choose to have it to be shut down at heart level? You don't, of course. Okay, so as the adult, you choose to, that you want to move beyond that. Okay, so you want to undo the choice now that you made there. The choice was to go into please mode as a coping mechanism. Now, why did you do that? Why did you shut down love? To cope. You did it to cope. It wasn't a dumb choice. It wasn't a dumb choice. You did it to survive. You did it to survive. You did it out of self-love. It was the best you could do as a little kid. The best you could do as a little kid to survive was to shut down. That's all you were able to do. So you don't have to give yourself a hard time about it. See these choices as survival choices made in self-love, the best that you could do to cope in that moment, a coping mechanism. But now with the tools and the awareness, the understanding, the knowing that you have, you don't need to do that anymore. You see how that takes all the judgment out of the whole thing and busts open the guilt, blame, forgiveness thing, and busts out of the retribution, revenge, self-righteousness thing? Do you really understand what I'm saying? It was the best you could do in that moment, and you did it out of self-love to survive. And at the time you probably thought, I'll worry about this later, I'll sort it out later, but it became an entrenched pattern. And as you got older and you experienced openness and you continued to be attacked and you experienced cruelty all around you and you were taken advantage of and you trusted people and they played cruel jokes on you and laughed at your expense, you just heaped more and more and more and more energy into that inner critic dynamic. Stop thinking. Now, the thinking is just the thinking is just about the to choose again in this, to choose and remind yourself that you don't need that anymore. Okay, it's important as part of the releasing of the judgment.
I still don't really get why we use the shutdown as our first response. Like if my parents disapproved of me about something, and I mean, it's tragic, but and it did happen, but I don't really understand why I chose that response. Like, why didn't I just go, well, they don't like it, well, I'm okay. How did I set myself up for that?
So, the first thing I have to say in response to that is, as Richard Bach says, the measure of your ignorance is the depth of your belief in tragedy and injustice. And I also never suggested in the process that you had to get anything. So that's just a complete head trip anyway. Why do you even want to get it? Why do you need to get it? How is it possibly going to facilitate the process of transmutation or transformation if you're going to get it? That's just you rising out of your heart into your head. Right? So the question, to even pursue that line of questioning, is going to negate the purpose of the process. The purpose of the process is to feel, to honour, to acknowledge the choice that was made. In actual fact, if you stop head tripping it and you allow yourself to genuinely feel into that moment when you made the choice, you know exactly why you made the choice. I'm going to shut down all this mental activity, right? Most of you have gone into this intense mental activity, right? Still the mind. Let's recap. In that particular moment, you made a choice to survive. This morning with your partner or someone, you chose to react. Why you chose to react is irrelevant. You chose to react. You chose to react as that child in response to that criticism. To cope, you chose to shut down. The alternative was to have daggers thrust into the very core of your heart and your feeling nature. Energy daggers. To have cords and connections which were going to feed your energy matrix with intense attack feelings and thoughts of fear. So you chose to shut down and hoped later on that you'd find Michael. But you to go and feel into that moment. You two, come on, Feel into the moment. That intense moment of choice. Then sleeping is not feeling into it. You are telling me I'm wrong again, my dear. Okay? You were trying to think about feeling. Feel. Feel. Now as you surrender to that, there's that moment of choice. Now the desire to think is when you start to get away from the centre. What happens with these experiences is that there's a core, and what clusters around it is subsequent similar choices which vibrate magnetically, are attracted magnetically, and they turn into clusters, right? Thinking about it is just exploring all the stuff which is clustered around that core. But if you just go to the core and neutralize it, then there's nothing to cluster around. So everything else that occurred subsequently, then simply returns to its correct place within the space-time continuum. You've got to get to the very core and not skillfully avoid. Your experience is that with your musicianship you are so able to get out of your own way that you're doing that. You're playing your body at the moment like a violin. Okay? So be one with it, with all the stuff. That's it. That's it. Courage, my friend. That impresses me. Okay? That particular moment. Now, just prior to that on the time track, there's a moment of expectation. What if, where you set yourself up for this, right? What if I'm attacked? I'm going to trust, and what if I'm attacked? And that's the chunk that we're looking for. From the moment when you chose to shut down to a little bit before then where you wondered, what if? We want that chunk of the time track. It will be blank, right? It will not be in the correct place. It will be fragmented out somewhere else in your memory banks. That little chunk with all of the perceptics and all of the feelings will be separated out into a separate memory bank. So we're going to take you into the other memory bank, which is actually the instinctive mind, where you stick that stuff so that it generates the unconscious, irrational, involuntary responses, reactions in the instinctive mind. And I want you to just choose to retrieve that chunk of data from the instinctive mind. And there's a real, the animal part of you, the animal part of our humanness will resist, because you instructed that animal part of you to use the fight or flight response and the memory banks associated with it to deal with any such future situations of criticism. Right? But it's like a master key. I want you to instruct that animal part of you that causes you to survive on the earth plane. Imagine you're reading a newspaper and you're in a daze and you walk off the curb and there's a car coming and part of you goes, "What? Watch out!" That's the part of you that we're looking for, right? Now that part of you, you go, "Thank you so much. I am grateful to you. Thank you so much. You have helped me to cope. You've kept me alive. So grateful. So grateful. I'm just so grateful to you. So grateful. Good on you. You've done a great job. And now, together, we can work to do it a different way. Fantastic. Thank you. So grateful. Awesome. All right? It's like, that's not going to work. It's like, thank you. Thank you for helping me to survive. Fantastic job. You've got me here to this point where I'm engaged in the process of integrated mastery and I've survived on this really cruel planet. You've done a great job. Okay? And you may feel the yawning and the desire to yawn, or the heart flutters is the energy moving through the chakra system, right? So we get that doorkeeper aspect of the survival mechanism within you to withdraw that chunk of data. We would put that chunk of data back into its correct place in the time continuum, right? And go back to the same incident, right? And you should be able to go back a little bit further, right? And there still might be intense feeling associated with it. It's like emotional charge associated with it. But you should be able to go a little bit back prior, back to the point where you went, I wonder what would happen if. So as soon as you said, I wonder what would happen if, that animal instinctive mind part of you said, I'll deal with it. If it happens, don't worry about it. And you said, okay. If you're having difficulty, call in the fifth ray and the illumination aspect. Increase the intensity of the fifth ray in your system. Illumination. If you can't find that moment, then you're still you're judging the emotional charge. I shouldn't have this emotional charge. I shouldn't have made this choice. I should have done it better. I should have... irrelevant, right? That's the inner critic. Defending the inner critic. Okay, try this then. The inner critic. Address, dialogue the inner critic. Dialogue with the inner critic. Talk to the inner critic. Okay, I love you. I don't need you to do this anymore now. And it'll go, oh yeah. No, really. I really don't need you to do this. It's in hand. It's okay. We're okay. We're okay. Thank you, faithful servant. Inner critic, thank you, my faithful servant. Marshal your will. Come on, marshal your will. Thank you, my faithful servant. Thank you, my faithful servant. I'm older now, I'm wiser now, and I don't need to do this anymore. You can rest. You can rest. I love you. Thank you so much. You can rest. You can rest. You can rest. You can rest. We've got to track that moment. There was a moment of choice where you told the instinctive mind to deal with situations that you were unable to process consciously. We must take that power back. Because it was the first moment of avoidance and denial. Avoidance and denial is also a coping mechanism made out of self-love. Anger is love of power. Everything's about love. It's all love. It's all motivated by love. But that love energy becomes corrupted. It becomes distorted. It becomes contaminated. That moment of choice. So I'm going to scan you backwards and forwards along the time track around that particular incident. I'm going to scan you backwards and forwards around that particular time. It's a choice. You feel yourself rocking, your consciousness moving. And feel yourself tightly hanging on. Feel how tightly you're hanging on. Tell yourself, choose to relax. And say to yourself, I am safe. Tell yourself, I am safe, 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 I'm safe, I am safe, I am safe, I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. I'm safe. I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. I'm safe. Hey, I'm safe. I'm really safe. I really am safe. And the bastards can give me their best shot and I'm still safe. I'm still safe. I am now safe. I believed I wasn't safe, yet I am safe. I am safe. I'm really safe. I'm really safe. I'm safe. I am safe. I am so safe that even slippery toilet paper can't get me. I'm safe. I am really safe. Really, 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 really safe. And it doesn't matter what happens in my learning, I'm able to cope with it. I'm able to deal with it without shutting down. I'm able to deal with it by expanding. I'm actually able to deal with difficult situations and adversity by expanding. I am able to deal with difficult situations by expansion. And I choose that. Not because it's good or bad, just because I tried the other thing and I'm bored with that. And now I'm choosing expansion, awareness. I am capable and I'm safe. I am love. I am. I am all I am. One with the universal mind. I am one with all life forms and they are one with me. I am love. I'm light. I am truth. I am peace. I am. And in that which I am, I choose love, and love I will. And I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. I release this energy which is not of me. I release this energy which is not of me and I return it to its original source. Breathe. I release this energy which is not of me and I return it to its original source. Thank you so much for the learning. Thank you so much for the learning. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Love your choices. Love your choices. Love your choices, because every choice you've ever made has been a survival choice. It's been a choice to cope in some way. Love those choices. Love your 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 mistakes. Just choose not to make them again. Love your choices. Love your mistakes. Mistakes are just opportunities to learn. They're just opportunities to learn. On a fourth-ray planet, in a second-ray solar system, largely the process is a system of negative learning. You try that and you go, oh, I won't do that again. You try that and you go, oh, I won't do that again. You try that and I go, I won't do that again. And you try that and you won't do that again. And you go, well, all that's left is this. And that's often the way that we guide ourselves until we genuinely become enlightened. Up until the point of genuine enlightenment, all we can do is have a go and then guide ourselves through a process of negative learning, learning what not to do. As we learn what not to do, it narrows the possibilities, and then we learn to move forward along the true path which is really right for us in this lifetime, and that is to achieve our destiny. And isn't that what you've all done? Isn't that how you've reached this point? And guess what? You might work with me for a little while and find another way. And if that's the case, I am deeply honoured and deeply grateful for the opportunity to share these experiences with you. I hold no ownership of you. I just seek for you to move into your own integrated mastery. I love you all. I really love you all. I really love you. And I'm really, really grateful to all of you. Because my life would be pretty boring if I didn't have the opportunity to stand up here and rave at you. And I really love you. And I have all this fun pushing your buttons. And why do I do this? Why do I do what I do? I don't know why you think I might do it. The reason I do it is because if I was you, I wish there was a Michael. It's no more complicated than that. That's my motivation. That's why I do what I do. Because I've had my Michaels in my life. And if I was you, I wish there was a Michael there for me. That's you. For me. That's all. That's why I do it. I've received and I'm giving back. And that's what service is all about. And that's where the real joy is. That's where the real joy is. So let's have some joy now. I'm going to flood that whole area of the time track now with joy. I'm going to radiate, resonate your feels to generate joy internally for you. If you but choose, please yourself. As with all things, take my advice and please yourself. Everything I say could be wrong. Okay, the way we complete this little process, with courage, with conviction, with will, I choose joy as a state of being. I now choose joy as a state of being. Let's say it out loud. I now choose joy as a state of being. I now choose joy as a state of being. I choose joy. I don't care what anyone else thinks. They can choose whatever they want. I choose joy. And I'm okay about it. And if someone else has a problem with that, that's their problem. Because I choose joy. I tried all that other stuff. I know all about that. I choose joy as a state of being. I choose joy as a state of being. I choose joy as a state of being. Now you could have done that in that moment, but you didn't. So do it now. Do it now. I choose joy as a state of being. I choose joy. I choose joy. I choose joy. No matter what the phenomena is in my life, I choose joy. Simple as that. Because who's the captain of the ship? If there's bits of you that disagree with you choosing joy in each and every moment, what do? Dialogue with it. Pretty simple. Do you need me for any of that? I'll give you the CD. Do you need me for any of that? You don't need me for any of that. You don't need a teacher for any of that. You can continue to run that process as a top-up to remind yourself, to help to overcome the inertia of the habits. You know that it's going to work, don't you? If you seriously apply yourself, commit yourself, that's going to work, isn't it? So that you're starting to get an idea of why I get you to do all the 5 finger exercises, because it leads you up to these processes which genuinely bring you into heart mastery in what we call being your own source on the planet and your own source to the planet. It won't be perfect right now, but you know right now that it's a possibility for you. You keep working at it, and if the counter intention comes up to that, you process it out, because I've given you all the tools to process it out. So who's got the power? You guys have got the power. And I'll keep guiding you. And I'll kick you up the bum if you get your head stuck up it. But I'm making myself redundant. You must feel that. I'm causing myself to be redundant in this process. That's what I'm doing. And that's why I draw so much criticism and counter-intention from other spiritual groups and stuff. So what we want to do for Aquarius is to create individual integrated masters expressing the God within them, within their individual uniqueness. This whole idea of cloney organisations is not something which is going to work. Individual integrated masters in their own right. That's the way for Aquarius, synthesis and unity. And you must feel you're well on the way to that. In 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, the way you're living your life is going to be completely different. Nothing will be the same. Nothing will be the same, but it will be a joyous expansion. It won't be a painful letting go. It will be a joyous expansion. Honestly. Honestly.